All right, so get this. You sent in some sources, and wow, we're talking UAPs, government secrecy, AI, even a little philosophy sprinkled in.
Sounds like a wild mix.
It is a fascinating mix for sure. It seems like you guys want all the good stuff, you know, the insights, the aha moments.
Right, to the point.
Exactly, without having to like wade through a ton of information.
Yeah, who has time for that?
And that's where we come in. So we're doing a deep dive today into this interview with Tucker Carlson on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
And let me tell you, it takes us down some pretty unexpected paths.
Yeah, I bet. Buckle up.
Yeah, so what I thought was really interesting is that Carlson, you know, he starts out as a total skeptic.
Really?
Yeah, but then over time, he becomes like a believer in this whole UAP phenomenon.
That's quite a journey.
It is, and his journey kind of mirrors, I think, the challenges a lot of people face these days in a world just flooded with information.
Totally. How do you even know what to believe anymore?
Right. It's tough. So one of the first things that Carlson brings up is this tweet about something called Project Aqua.
Project Aqua.
Yeah, and it supposedly got, like, accidentally leaked by Homeland Security.
Homeland Security. Seriously.
That's what they say. And the tweet claims that there's this whole government program that's studying the medical effects of UAP encounters.
Like what kind of medical effects?
They mention things like deaths, injuries, even psychological trauma for families.
Whoa, hold on. That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. Now, I know it's totally natural to be skeptical of leaks like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially these days, it seems like everybody's always claiming to have some secret insider info.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we even begin to figure out if something like this Project Aqua thing is actually credible?
That's the million-dollar question. What stands out to you about this information?
Honestly, for me, it's the details that really hooked me. The tweet doesn't just say like, oh, you know, people got hurt. It gets specific.
Like how?
Well, they talk about medical and psychological effects. They even mention like collateral damage to families. It just feels more grounded somehow.
Yeah, more grounded than your typical vague, you know, conspiracy theory. Right, exactly. It's not just some shadowy figures whispering about aliens in the desert.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The level of detail can definitely make something seem more believable.
Right. Like, think about other famous leaks like the Snowden files.
Yeah, those are packed with specific details that made them seem really credible.
Even though they were super controversial at the time.
Oh, yeah. But, of course, we always got to be careful.
Oh, for sure.
Because disinformation campaigns, those can use specific details, too.
Right, to make things seem more real than they are.
It's a tricky game, for sure.
It's like walking a tightrope, you know?
Totally.
Trying to figure out who to trust, what's real, what's not. It's exhausting.
I hear you. But here's where things get really interesting for me.
Okay, lay it on me.
This whole Project Aqua leak, it ties directly into how Carlson's own views on this stuff actually changed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he starts off as this total skeptic, totally buying into the standard narratives about America. You know, the whole land of the free and all that. Exactly. He even admits that he used to think anyone who questioned those narratives was a total cook.
Uh-huh. Oh, man.
I know, right? But then something happens.
What happened?
He describes this pivotal moment during the Trump campaign when he realizes that the government is actually spying on Trump.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, and this was something that he had initially dismissed as just, you know, a crazy conspiracy theory.
Wow, so he was like proven wrong.
Big time.
Yeah.
And this realization, it was a huge deal for him.
I bet. It's like a total wake-up call, right?
Exactly. Like, if they lied about this, what else are they lying about?
Makes you question everything.
And that's when he dives headfirst into the world of UAPs.
Okay, so he's like, all right, I'm taking the red pill. Let's go down the rabbit hole.
Basically. And that's such a crucial point, you know? When our core beliefs are shaken like that.
It makes you re-examine everything.
It forces us to re-examine other things that we might be taking for granted.
Like stuff we never even thought to question.
Exactly. And in a world that's just overflowing with information, this skill of questioning our assumptions.
That's like survival skill number one.
It's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
What else might we be blindly accepting that deserves a second look?
That is the question, isn't it? So as Carlson starts digging into this whole UAP phenomenon, he encounters like a mix of people, right? Some he calls deranged.
I bet.
But also some very credible sources.
Okay, so who stands out to you?
Well, one that really stands out is this DOD employee who insists that this phenomenon is absolutely real.
A DOD employee. That's pretty legit.
Yeah, and this is where the conversation takes a darker turn.
Oh, how so?
Well, Carlson stops using the neutral term UAP, and he starts calling it just the phenomenon.
Okay.
And he emphasizes that people have been hurt, even killed during encounters with these things.
Whoa. Okay, so this is not just lights in the sky anymore?
Oh, it's getting serious.
So what else does he say?
He even mentioned evidence of these deaths and injuries coming out through the VA court system.
The VA, like the Veterans Affairs.
Yeah. For those who don't know, that's the system that handles legal issues for veterans. So the fact that these cases are popping up there, it suggests some level of government awareness, you know.
Maybe even a cover-up.
Potentially. And that part really sent chills down my spine.
I bet. It raises some serious ethical questions, too.
For sure.
If the government knows about deaths and injuries connected to UAPs,
yeah,
why are they keeping it from the public?
Yeah, what are the implications of that kind of cover-up?
Makes you think about other historical events where the government hasn't exactly been transparent, right?
Oh, totally. It's like peeling back layers of an onion.
And with each layer, the mystery just deepens.
Exactly. And then Carlson throws a real curveball.
Oh, what's that?
He starts talking about these UAPs not as aliens in the traditional sense,
okay,
but as interdimensional beings.
Interdimensional beings.
Oh, I know, right? It's mind-blowing.
That's a pretty wild departure from your typical sci-fi alien narrative.
Totally. So what do you make of that?
Well, Carlson, he uses this analogy of chimpanzees being observed by humans.
Right.
And he suggests that these interdimensional beings, they might be studying us.
Like we study chimps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe even influencing human evolution.
Like we try to do with chimps sometimes.
It's a thought-provoking analogy for sure.
He actually argues that we're like the chimps in this scenario.
Totally oblivious.
Yeah, totally oblivious to the fact that we're being watched and maybe even manipulated by something way more advanced than us.
It's a humbling thought.
It really is.
Imagine a flat sheet of paper, right?
Yeah.
That's our three-dimensional world.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now imagine a sphere passing through that sheet. That's how some physicists describe interdimensional beings.
They're like existing in dimensions we can't even perceive.
Exactly. It's a concept that kind of bends your mind a little, but it's out there.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew about reality.
For sure. And if these beings are speeding up our technological evolution...
Is that a good thing, a bad thing? Who knows?
Could AI, in a sense, become our new god?
That is a question for the ages. What are your thoughts on that?
Now that is a question for the ages. And speaking of AI, that's where our deep dive takes its next turn. Carlson expresses deep concern about the potential of AI to actually enslave humanity.
I mean, it's a valid concern, right?
He even says, if we agreed that the outcome is bad, we should strangle it in its crib right now.
Whoa. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, he's not holding back when it comes to the potential dangers of unchecked AI.
It's a serious topic, for sure.
It really underscores the urgency of having these conversations now before things potentially get out of control.
Right, like before it's too late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are the potential benefits and risks of AI? How do we make sure it serves us and not the other way around?
These are questions we got to grapple with, but what do you think? Have you ever considered the idea that AI could become a threat?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people are asking these days, and actually Carlson kind of lightens the mood a bit here.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, he points out what he sees as this, like, hypocrisy among some climate change activists.
Okay.
Who don't seem too worried about AI's massive energy consumption.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good point. It's like all this talk about reducing our carbon footprint.
Right, but then AI gets a free pass.
Exactly. It's a bit of a head-scratcher for sure.
He even shares this personal anecdote.
Oh, I love those.
About getting criticized for using a wood stove.
Oh, wow.
While AI is just, churning through energy like nobody's business.
It's almost comical, isn't it?
It is. This ties back to that theme of power dynamics,
For sure.
Who gets to decide what's acceptable and what's not?
Right, whose interests are being served by certain narratives.
Exactly. It's crucial to question those assumptions,
Like, don't just take things at face value.
Yeah, dig a little deeper.
Always look beneath the surface.
Yeah.
And from there, Carlson takes aim at the state of American democracy.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Yeah, he's clearly frustrated with what he sees as dishonesty and hypocrisy in the government.
I mean, who isn't these days?
Right. It's like a broken record.
This frustration actually leads him to a bigger point about the erosion of free speech in America.
Okay, I'm listening.
He discusses this case where a black nationalist socialist group is facing prison time.
Whoa, seriously?
For expressing views that align with Russian propaganda.
That's wild. So they're being punished for their opinions.
Essentially. Even though they haven't committed any actual crimes.
It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It really makes you think about the limits of free speech, you know.
Especially in a time of, like, heightened political tensions.
Exactly. When does dissent become dangerous?
Where do we draw the line?
It's a delicate balance. And Carlson seems to be arguing that the government is tipping the scales.
In a way that's eroding our freedoms.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought. But then, almost as if to take a break from the heaviness of the topic,
He tells a joke.
he shares this hilarious anecdote about movie critics.
Uh-huh. Oh, I love those.
It's a total laugh out loud moment.
But I bet there's a deeper meaning there.
Oh, there always is with Carlson. He uses this anecdote to make a point about the importance of honesty.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's funny how humor can sometimes open the door to these profound insights, you know.
It's like it disarms you and then bam.
Right. Carlson argues that true creativity requires honesty.
Okay.
He believes that lying is the ultimate roadblock to genuine artistic expression.
Like you can't create something truly authentic if you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. He draws a parallel to comedy.
Oh, I like this.
Saying that a joke thief never truly succeeds.
Because they're missing that spark.
That authentic creativity that comes from honesty.
It's about being true to yourself and your craft.
And I think this applies to life in general, don't you?
Oh, totally.
Admitting you are wrong.
Yeah, it can be so hard.
But it's incredibly liberating.
It takes a lot of courage, though.
It does. It allows for genuine learning and growth.
So are there any areas in your own life where you might need to reevaluate your beliefs?
It's a question worth asking ourselves from time to time.
Definitely. And on that note, Carlson reflects on the positive impact of podcasts.
Oh, yeah, he's a big fan.
He praises their ability to facilitate these long-form, distraction-free conversations.
He really appreciates that unfiltered, in-depth nature of podcasts.
Like you can really dive deep into a topic.
Exactly. He sees them as a much-needed antidote to the superficiality and sensationalism of mainstream media.
It's like a breath of fresh air.
He even gives a shout-out to Joe Rogan.
Of course he does.
For his willingness to platform controversial figures.
Like Alex Jones.
Yeah, who's been effectively banished from most other media outlets.
It's an interesting point, isn't it?
Carlson seems to be saying that true progress requires engagement with diverse perspectives.
Even those we might find distasteful or disagree with.
We can't just shut down conversations that make us uncomfortable.
It's about challenging our own biases and being willing to hear different viewpoints. But then just when you think the conversation couldn't get any deeper,
takes another turn.
Carlson circles back to his belief in the battle between good and evil.
Now, that's a heavy topic.
He acknowledges that this might sound a bit out there to some people.
Yeah, not everyone's going to be on board with that.
But for him, it's become a core part of how he sees the world.
It's a fundamental belief.
He even shares this rather unsubtle anecdote about his son mistaking him for a demon during a psychedelic experience.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
It is. He believes this experience had a profound impact on his perspective, you know? Like it shook him to his core.
I can imagine.
And made him question the nature of reality itself.
Yeah, that'll do it. It raises some big questions, too.
For sure. Like, what is the nature of evil?
Right. Does it exist as like an independent force?
Or is it just a byproduct of human weakness?
It's a topic that's fascinated philosophers and theologians for centuries.
Definitely. And Carlson, while he acknowledges the existence of evil,
he cautions against simplistic interpretation.
Like, don't just attribute everything bad to, like, some demonic force.
Exactly. How do we distinguish between genuine threats and mere shadows?
Right. What internal compass can guide us through these complexities?
It's not always easy to tell the difference, especially when we're bombarded with information from all sides.
So true. And to wrap up this part of our deep dive, Carlson makes a final point that I found particularly thought-provoking.
Okay, I'm all ears.
He argues that weak leaders are actually more susceptible to evil than those who are strong and assertive.
Interesting. So it's not just about being a nice guy.
Right. He uses Congressman Mike Johnson as an example.
Okay, I know him.
He describes him as a genuinely nice guy, but ultimately a weak man who's easily manipulated.
Why those with less noble intentions?
It's a nuanced perspective that challenges our typical assumptions about leadership, you know?
We often associate strength with aggression or dominance.
But Carlson's saying that true strength lies in integrity, courage.
A willingness to stand up for what's right.
Even when it's tough.
It's about having a strong moral compass and the resilience to resist the corrupting influence of power.
And he challenges us to cultivate these qualities within ourselves.
To become the kind of leaders who can navigate the complexities of our world with wisdom and integrity.
It's like he's saying that true strength isn't about bully or shouting the loudest, but about having a spine and sticking to your principles.
Right. It's about inner strength.
But how do we recognize that kind of strength in ourselves and others?
Well, Carlson points out that often it's the quiet ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people who don't crave the spotlight.
The ones who are just quietly doing the right thing.
Exactly. They possess this kind of inner strength.
Yeah.
He uses the example of a Congressman, Mike Johnson, someone he describes as a genuinely nice guy. But Carlson argues that Johnson's niceness can also be a weakness.
How so?
Making him vulnerable to manipulation by those with less noble intentions.
So it's not enough to just be nice. You need that inner compass.
That willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it's tough.
And Carlson doesn't shy away from naming names when it comes to those he sees as lacking this kind of integrity.
Oh, really? Like who?
He even calls out Mike Pompeo, the former CIA director. He accuses Pompeo of plotting to assassinate Julian Assange.
The WikiLeaks founder.
Yeah, Carlson doesn't mince words. He calls Pompeo a criminal who should be held accountable.
That's a serious accusation.
It is, and it gets even more intense when Carlson brings up Pompeo's role in convincing Trump to keep the JFK assassination documents classified.
Oh, wow. So he's connecting the dots here.
This really fuels Carlson's suspicions about a long-standing government cover-up.
It all ties back to his distrust of those in power, doesn't it?
He sees this pattern of secrecy and lack of accountability as a sign that something is deeply wrong within the system.
Like the system itself is rigged.
It's almost like he's saying that. But then in a surprising twist, Carlson turns the lens inward.
He gets introspective.
He admits his own past mistakes and naivete.
It's refreshing to hear someone in the public eye admit they were wrong, isn't it?
It is. He talks about how he used to be too trusting of authority figures, not questioning their motives.
Not considering the potential consequences of their actions.
It's a powerful example of self-reflection and personal accountability.
Which he argues is essential for growth.
And this brings us to a broader point Carlson makes about the importance of honesty and humility in navigating this crazy world.
Honesty and humility. Those are powerful tools.
He believes that creativity itself stems from honesty. He actually compares lying to stealing jokes in comedy.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy.
A joke thief might get a laugh in the short term, but they'll never be a truly great comedian because they lack that authentic spark.
That comes from honest engagement with the material.
So it's about being true to yourself, right? Embracing your own unique voice and perspective, even when it's messy or imperfect.
And Carlson contrasts this with what he sees as a culture of hypocrisy and deceit, particularly in politics and media.
Yeah, he's not a fan of that.
He believes this culture of dishonesty erodes trust and ultimately weakens society as a whole.
It's like a cancer that spreads.
He challenges us to resist this trend, to cultivate honesty and integrity in our own lives, and to demand the same from our leaders.
It's a call to action to awaken our own moral compasses.
To recognize that our individual choices ultimately shape the world we live in.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into Carlson's interview, one final thought from him really stuck with me.
Okay, what's that?
He argues that ultimately we each have a choice in how we respond to the complexities of our time.
We can choose to be passive observers.
Just accepting the narratives we're given.
Or we can choose to be active participants.
Questioning assumptions, seeking truth, and having the courage to stand up for what we believe in.
It's an empowering message, isn't it?
It really is. We're not just pawns in some grand game.
We have agency, we have a voice.
And by embracing honesty, courage, and critical thinking, we can each play a role in creating a more just and equitable world.
That's a powerful note to end on. It's been a wild ride exploring these ideas with you.
What resonated most with you? What will you take away from this deep dive?
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you. Remember, the world is full of complexities and contradictions.
Don't be afraid to question things.
Keep asking questions, keep seeking truth, and keep challenging yourself and those around you to live with integrity and intention.
Until next time, keep those minds open and keep diving deep.
See ya.